The boardroom felt like it was closing in on me as Marcus paced around the table, waving documents like trophies. 10 years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights building this company. And he thought a few forged signatures could erase all that. "You should see your expression," he chuckled, tugging at his designer tie. "Honestly, Rachel, did you really think you'd stay in charge forever? A woman with a high school diploma pretending to be a CEO. I'm Rachel Chin, 42 years old, and I was watching my own husband try to steal everything I had worked for. When I met Marcus 12 years ago, he was a broke junior accountant drowning in debt. I ran a small but promising tech startup and needed someone to help with the finances. He was smart, charming, and supportive of my dreams. I believed in him. I trusted him completely. That was mistake number one." "The board already signed off on the transition," Marcus said smugly, sliding a set of papers toward me. "Your signature's on every page. You should thank me, really. I've saved you the headache of lawyers and courtrooms." I lifted the documents and studied the forged signatures. Impressive work. Almost perfect. But my pulse didn't quicken and my voice didn't tremble, because Marcus had underestimated me. He thought I was just another lucky businesswoman. What he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this exact day for 3 years. It all began with a lipstick stain, not on his shirt, but on a financial report he gave me. A neat red smear that matched his secretary's signature lipstick. That night I started going through our financial records. What I uncovered made my stomach twist. Small discrepancies, secret transfers, fake meetings where I was supposedly present while actually overseas. Instead of confronting him, I went silent. I started quietly buying company shares through a network of shell corporations, using the savings he thought I'd set aside for a Paris getaway. Every time Marcus thought he was tightening his grip on my company, I was strengthening mine. By the time he was ready to strike, I owned 80% of the business, and he had no clue. "I'm giving you 1 week to clear out your office," Marcus said, glancing at his Rolex, the one I'd given him last birthday. "You're lucky I'm not having you escorted out today." I rose smoothly, straightened my skirt and smiled. "How generous of you, Marcus. I'll use the time wisely." His brow furrowed. "That's all you've got to say. No screaming. No tears." "Why would I cry?" I replied, collecting my briefcase. "You said it yourself. Everything happens for a reason." My heels echoed down the marble hallway as I left. I could almost feel him smirking behind me, convinced he'd finally won, that the woman who gave him everything was walking away defeated. I pulled out my phone and made a quiet call. "Sandra, it's Rachel. Remember that contingency plan we set up? It's time." Sandra had been my lawyer and friend for 2 decades. She was the one who first suspected Marcus's schemes. "Men like him," she'd warned me, "always believe they're the smartest in the room. Let him think that." And I had. Every move Marcus made, every trap he set, I turned it into my advantage. The next morning I arrived early at the office. The halls buzzed with whispers. People looked at me with pity, the woman who lost her empire to her own husband. By noon Marcus had taken my office. My photos were shoved into a cardboard box while his expensive art cluttered the walls. He'd even changed the access codes, just in case I tried to steal something. "I've called a company-wide meeting for this afternoon," he said, lounging in my chair like a king. "Time to make my big announcement. The transition in leadership." I kept packing my belongings into the box beside me. "Of course. And what about Sarah? Will she remain CFO?" Marcus smirked. "Sarah? No, she's out. I'm bringing in my own people. Can't have your little loyalists hanging around causing chaos." Sarah had been with me since the very beginning, back when our office was my garage and our desks were folding tables. She wasn't just my CFO, she was family. And more importantly, she was one of only 2 people who knew about my contingency plan. The company-wide meeting was scheduled for 3 that afternoon. The entire staff gathered in the main conference room, tension buzzing in the air. Marcus stood front and center, radiating arrogance, while I quietly took a seat in the back beside Sarah. Her fingers were gripping her tablet like it was a lifeline. As you've all probably heard, Marcus began, flashing a smug smile, there have been some recent changes in ownership. I understand that change can be uncomfortable, but under my leadership, we're entering a bold new chapter. Before he could continue, Sarah rose from her seat. Actually, Mr. Chin, there's been an update to that ownership structure you might want to be aware of. Marcus's smile faltered. Excuse me. I don't recall inviting comments, Sarah. In fact, you can consider this your... Marcus, I interrupted, standing. Why don't you take a look at these first? At that perfect moment, the conference room doors opened. Sandra walked in, calm and composed, carrying a thick folder of documents. Behind her followed two actual board members, the ones Marcus had replaced with his fake supporters. Marcus blinked, confused. What is this supposed to be? Sandra laid the stack of papers on the table. These are official records showing that Firetech Industries, Summit Ventures, and Highland Capital, the three largest shareholders in this company, are all controlled by your wife. The color drained from Marcus's face. Combined, Sandra continued smoothly, those firms hold 80% of company shares, which means any leadership decisions must be approved by the majority shareholder, Mrs. Chin. Marcus's voice cracked. That's not possible. I vetted every investor myself. I took a few steps forward. Did you, Marcus? Or did you just see what you wanted to see? A list of powerful firms eager to back your little coup. A heavy silence filled the room. Every eye was on him. The realization hit him like a wave. Every move he'd made had been carefully anticipated and countered. You can't do this, he snarled, grabbing my arm. I'm your husband. I pulled free, calm as ever. Not anymore. The divorce papers were filed this morning. You might want to check your email. The gasp that rippled through the room was almost theatrical. Marcus fumbled for his phone, but his face fell when he realized his access to the company network was already revoked. Security will see you out, I said, nodding toward the two guards by the door. No need to pack. We'll have your things sent to your new address. Oh, and Marcus. I paused, meeting his eyes with a small smile. You should reread our prenup. The infidelity clause is enlightening. As the guards escorted him out, his protests echoing down the hallway, I turned back to the employees who sat frozen in disbelief. I know this has been a shock, I said, setting my briefcase on the table. You'll have answers soon. But first we have work to do. Sarah, could you bring up the quarterly projections? The staff slowly began to move again, whispering among themselves. I could see it in their eyes. Questions, awe, and maybe even a little fear. They were wondering, how long had I been planning this? What kind of leader thinks that far ahead? They were about to find out. By the end of the week, the story had gone viral. News outlets everywhere calling it one of the most brilliant corporate reversals in years. I spent the next few days in meetings, calming clients and investors. But instead of panic, the reaction was the opposite. Confidence soared. Partners who'd been hesitant before were suddenly eager to sign new deals. One CEO shook my hand after a meeting and said, "The way you handled that mess, it shows the kind of leadership we all wish we had." I just smiled. Sometimes, I said, you have to lose everything to prove what you're really made of. The kind of strategic foresight we value in a partner. While I was rebuilding my company, Marcus was discovering just how thoroughly I had dismantled his schemes. The prenup he'd so casually signed years ago contained a little clause about infidelity, one that not only safeguarded every cent of my assets but also required him to repay all earnings accumulated during our marriage if he ever strayed. And stray he did. The proof I'd gathered over time was ironclad. Hotel bills, secret accounts, and photos that told a story he could no longer deny. Even his secretary, once loyal to him, turned over evidence once she realized he'd been deceiving her as well. He's trying to negotiate, Sandra told me one morning during our usual legal briefing. He's willing to drop his claims to company assets if you agree to waive the prenup penalties. I thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. No compromises. He needs to understand. Every choice has consequences. Over the next few months, the company thrived like never before. Without Marcus quietly siphoning funds and manipulating departments, productivity soared. Profits jumped 40%, and the negativity he'd cultivated among certain executives evaporated almost overnight. About 6 months later, I arrived at my office to find a cream-colored envelope resting on my desk. It was from Marcus's mother, Margaret. "I always knew you were intelligent," her handwritten letter began, "but I never realized how capable you truly were." Marcus finally confessed. Not willingly, but the truth tends to surface. "Though he's my son, I understand why you did what you did." He needed this lesson, even if he won't admit it yet. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my drawer. Margaret had always been kind, even when her son wasn't. Her words meant more than she probably realized. In the months that followed, I focused on transformation, not just of the company but of myself. I introduced stronger internal oversight, made corporate decisions more transparent, and launched a foundation dedicated to helping women in business protect their ventures from betrayal and manipulation. A year after Marcus's failed coup, I stood once again in that same conference room where everything had nearly fallen apart. Only now, the space was filled with laughter, applause, and the quiet hum of success. We were celebrating our most profitable quarter yet. "As some of you already know," I began, scanning the faces of my loyal team, "today marks the beginning of something new. We're launching the Phoenix program, an initiative offering mentorship, legal guidance, and funding for women entrepreneurs who faced personal or professional betrayal. Because sometimes, the greatest challenges come from those closest to us." Sarah, now our CEO, was the first to clap. The rest followed, their applause echoing like thunder. For the first time, the warmth I felt wasn't about triumph or revenge. It was about rebirth, turning pain into purpose. As for Marcus, last I heard he was back where he started, working as a junior accountant at a small Denver firm, living alone in a modest studio, and driving that same old car from the early days. Life has a funny way of balancing the scales. The company continues to grow, but this time it's growth rooted in integrity, honesty, and shared success. The shell corporations I once built to protect myself from Marcus now fund programs that protect other women from people like him. In the end, Marcus did teach me something. Success isn't only about creating something worthwhile, it's about safeguarding it from those who take it away. He tried to strip me of everything I'd earned. Instead, he gave me the motivation to become stronger than ever. When people ask about that chapter of my life, I simply smile and say, the best revenge is being ready. Because while Marcus was busy plotting his takeover, I was learning the most valuable business principle there is. Trust carefully, and document everything. The old conference room still stands, though it's been remodeled. The heavy mahogany table where Marcus once strutted with his forgeries is gone, replaced with sleek wood carved in a subtle phoenix motif. A quiet reminder that from the ashes of betrayal, something far stronger can rise.